It's time for my final top 13 episodes countdown as I reveal my top 13 episodes from the Stephen Moffat era. But before I begin, it's important that I state that much like the Graham Williams era, I am not a fan of the Stephen Moffat era. So this top 13 list isn't going to be that good, as I believe there were far fewer hits than misses. So with that being said, number 13, Listen. This started off with such a great premise. What if the monsters under your bed were real? And then it went downhill. But that doesn't mean it's bad. It just had the potential to be much better than it actually was. As we find out the monsters under your bed aren't real, despite us clearly seeing one, which is why it's at number 13. Number 12. Sleep No More. Once again I go for the premise instead of the content, because after seeing this episode, I now believe that businesses in the future will use some kind of technology to make sure they can operate 24/7, and that frightens the poo out of me. Other than the brilliant concept, it's a pretty meh episode. Number 11. The Hungry Earth / Cold Blood. This is the return of the Silurians before Vastra became the focal point. The Silurian design update is a major improvement, and it no longer feels like someone is just wearing a mask. Sadly though, this is merely an updated version of Doctor Who and the Silurians, and the only upside is the special effects. Number 10. The Empress of Mars. This episode is completely bonkers. Who sits down and thinks, I want to put some Victorians on Mars? The episode itself though is just another standard episode of Doctor Who. There's nothing offensively bad about it, but if I'm honest, the main reason I like this episode is for the cameo of Alpha Centauri. Because unlike some other cameos that have happened in the past, this one is so unexpected that it makes you question if what you saw actually happened. Number 9. The Doctor's Wife. Giving the TARDIS a physical presence is a fantastic idea, as it allows the Doctor to interact with it in a way that hasn't been done before or since. There's just one problem though. If the TARDIS really is the Doctor's wife, does that mean the Doctor is a wife beater? Number 8. The Rebel Flesh / The Almost People. The twists and turns in these two episodes are amazing. For example, in The Almost People, the fake Doctor pushes Amy against the wall and questions her. However, later on we learn the fake Doctor was actually the real Doctor, so when watching that scene back again, we realise he's using the fake identity so he can question the fake Amy. My only criticism is, why did the evil doppelganger have to transform herself into a typical Doctor Who monster, especially when the effects weren't able to make that monster look believable. Number 7. Amy's Choice. An excellent premise for an episode, as Amy must choose between a quiet life with Rory or a hectic life with the Doctor. Toby Jones is fantastic as the Dream Lord, and you can tell he relished having the chance to play an evil psychotic madman, as all his lines are perfectly delivered. And this episode sums up the human race perfectly, as sometimes we want two completely separate things at the same time, no matter how much they contradict each other. But on a lighter note, whoever thought of giving Rory a ponytail is an absolute genius. Number 6. Asylum of the Daleks. By the time this episode originally aired, we knew Jenna Coleman was going to be the next companion. So when we saw her die in this episode, we wondered what the hell was going on. There was also the brilliant twist of the Daleks asking for the Doctor to save them, as for once they're scared of what might actually happen if there's a breach at the asylum. The only real problem I have with this episode is the sudden separation and reconciliation of Amy and Rory. It just seems so forced, as it was a way to tell the audience that thanks to what happened to Amy in the past, she's now unable to have any more children. Which makes me question whether I'm watching Doctor Who or EastEnders. Number 5. The Name of the Doctor. I remember before this episode aired, everyone was wondering what the Doctor's name actually is. But did you really think it would be revealed? Of course not. We found out the Ninth Doctor ended the Time War in a way that went against everything all the other Doctors stood for. Oh, and by the way, I'd like to put forward the idea that the Doctor's real name is Keith. Because if they were ever going to reveal his name, it's going to be so anticlimactic, the writers might as well troll us with a god-awful name. And if anyone named Keith is watching this and is offended by my last remark, change your name, mate. Number 4. The Zygon Invasion / the Zygon Inversion. This is essentially a sequel to The Day of the Doctor, and the concept behind it is genius. In The Day of the Doctor, we learn that the humans and Zygons agreed to live side by side on Earth, with the majority of the human population not having a clue about their alien neighbours. And these 2 episodes show us what happens afterwards. What would happen if 2 intelligent species live side by side? Can they coexist? What will happen if they realise they can't? The only real problem I have with this story is from the 14th Doctor's point of view, there is no real danger, so in theory, these 2 episodes don't really matter. Number 3. The Day of the Doctor. An episode which had so much to do. It had to celebrate the first 50 years, whilst also bridging the gap between the classic and New Who eras. And although it was brief, seeing a few moments from the Time War was amazing. I only wish there was more of it. Now let's talk about the ending. And unlike some fans, I'm actually okay with Gallifrey being saved, as an episode celebrating 50 years of the show should be uplifting. I mean, could you imagine if the episode ended with the Ninth Doctor accepting his fate and destroying Gallifrey? That would kind of take away the whole celebration aspect, wouldn't it? Sure, some things don't really have to make much sense, but if there was ever a time to ignore those nagging issues, surely it's during an anniversary special. Number 2. The Magicians Apprentice / the Witch's Familiar. One of the problems with having the Daleks feature in so many episodes is the argument of, it's the greatest threat to all civilizations in the universe, but how come the Doctor always manages to defeat them? Which is a valid point, but these 2 episodes could possibly explain why that always happens. If the Daleks were to destroy any of the Doctors before his 14th incarnation was able to save their creator, they would ultimately stop their own creation. They are locked in the paradox of wanting to kill the Doctor, but they know they can't actually do it. And it's just a shame that point was never raised within the episode. And number 1, Knock Knock. This may shock most of you, and I can see why, but I think David Suchet did such a brilliant job of playing this seemingly twisted villain that it genuinely came as a shock to me when we find out why he's doing what he's doing. Also, it was nice to see a companion trying to spend time away from the Doctor, as Bill made new relationships with people closer to her own age, which is something we haven't seen before. It's just a shame we never see any of those characters ever again. So that's it, my top 13 episodes from the Stephen Moffat era. Do you agree with my choices? If not, why not leave a comment below and tell me about your favourite episodes?